how is AI shifting the workforce? As long as customers plus resources equals business success, as long as this equation remains the same, the future will be workforce management. This role so dynamically changes that we're not just talking about humans, we're talking about any resource that we employ on behalf of the business, to conduct business on behalf of the business. That's an agent. There is nothing more important to your organization. If you go talk to your CEO and your CFO and your COO, there's nothing more important to them than the ability to obtain a customer, their ability to obtain a customer, and the resources that are supplying that customer. Because what could be more important to the business? Everything is a byproduct of that, right? Like profitability, like these are things that people will say, oh, well, we gotta have great profit margins. Margins on what if you don't got no customer? Right. Where the margins coming from, right? Or, we gotta have a great this or a great that. On what if we have no customer, right? So there's really nothing more important to your executive leadership, your organization, right, than the ability to obtain a customer and then the resources that are required to serve that customer, right? Would you agree? Or is there something else magical that I have not yet experienced, right? Another component. Would you agree? Yes. Don't agree with me. I was raised on with all boys, so I'm used to being unagreeable, right? If you have a thought, I would love to hear that. But over the years, what I have seen as a constant theme in business and talk.
Hey guys, listen, so y'all know I'm a data nerd, and 88% of you guys that are watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. So if you are finding value in this content, can I ask you to do me a favor? Could you subscribe to our channel? What this allows us to do is to continue to keep adding value, bringing insights and the latest in trends around customer experience, employee experience, business profitability, workforce management. Thank you so much for being here. You are truly valued. We appreciate if you would subscribe and follow us for more information.
Talking to executives, it's like, hey, it always boils down to we're trying to, even when it comes to their product roadmap, their service map, like all these different things, right? Customer experience, employee experience, work, every department, account, all these different things. They're trying to obtain a customer. They're trying to figure out how to serve that customer. If this is true, the future is WFM. You are so uniquely positioned right now in your industry, in the fields that we are in, to really understand how do we help executives obtain customers and how do we help the resources that are serving those customers. If this statement is true, that there is nothing more important to an organization than their ability to obtain a customer and to serve that customer, what we're talking about at the core of what workforce management is, I know I'm guilty of saying this, so I'm gonna say it first. When people ask, what do you do? What is workforce management? Oh, we make sure we have the right people in the right place at the right time. See, I'm already getting giggles, right? Because that's what we say, right? And that's very true. What we really have to start now saying, though, instead of it's about having the right people in the right place at the right time, right? So we can serve our customer. It's about having really the right resource in the right place at the right time. Because I think it was Mark Benioff of Salesforce who were saying, well, this would be the last generation, right, that serves workforce leaders or managers that manage a human-only workforce. We start to think about how the workforce is shifting, okay? The workplace is shifting and executives are thinking about AI strategies, machines, robotics. I mean, I was driving home the other day and I'm a techie. So I lean in when it comes to technology. Man, I was driving home the other day, pulled in my subdivision, and it was a little thing out there cutting the yard, cutting this man. I said, no, it's not. Wait a second. Like, what is going on, right? What I'm saying is, are the dynamics when we think about just how we engage as humans, our workforce, our workplace, it is no longer just pure humans. right? It is AI, it's all of these different things. And workforce management at its core, regardless of all of these different moving parts, is still about customer produces a demand, right, for my business. And then my job is to provide resources for the business so that they can supply this demand. I know we a lot of times we want to make it more, right? Because that's job security, right? If you ask me what I do, I'm like, hey, I'm about to bring out a whole bunch of things, but my list gonna be long, right? I'm bringing out everything, pulling out all the stops. But when we boil it all the way down to the basic, right? It's like, hey, customer, supply, customer. Demand, customer produces a demand, and I need to supply that demand with resources, right? Future is WFM. So as long as that season exists, I'm always going to be doing workforce management. The way this looks may look different, and we may have to evolve as workforce management professionals, right, to be more what I believe strategic advisors, right? I even believe the role in the name could use a facelift, right? But I believe that when we think about workforce management, it's no longer just the tactical side of the house, the fundamentals, which are critical. It's more of a executive strategic advisor. That's what the role becomes. We have to begin to think like business owners or executives and act like WFM professionals. When we say think like a business owner, but act like a WFM professional, what am I talking about? When I'm saying think like a business owner, I'm saying we have to think about what our CEOs and executives, right, and senior leadership care about. And all day, they are thinking about things like the product and service, okay? What do we actually sell, okay? They're thinking about marketing and sales, like how do we get it to the market? How do we sell it? Are we selling it, right? They're thinking about, okay, now how do I deliver this? Then they're thinking about, okay, are we delivering it efficiently and effectively enough to where I can be profitable? Right? These are the things that your CEOs, right, that's creating the vision, driving the direction, or your executives that they've now put in place to say, okay, now you're over marketing, you're over sales, you're over this, you're over these different sub-functions of the organization. This is what they care about. Well, workforce management professionals, we directly tie into, like, without reaching. Right? I'm sure we could reach into the other things as well, because that's what we do, you know. But right, without even reaching, we directly impact delivery and profits. Like without even trying to be extra about it. When we think about delivery, how the organization is going to deliver the product, how they're going to deliver, line up the resources, we directly impact delivery because we're aligning resources all the time. Workforce management is all about, okay, hey, aligning the resources with the demand so that we can deliver. We're having this delivery thing that we're doing, and then we're saying, okay, now can we do it more effective? Can we shave off handle time? Can we shave off this? Can we do whatever so that we can increase profit margin? Without even reaching, we're directly tied into what executives and CEOs of our organization care about, yet many times they don't even know you exist. Why is that?
You're doing a good job.
You're doing a good job. I like that answer. You are doing a good job, right?
They don't want to even think about it themselves.
They don't want to think about the tactical part of the spark plug.
They don't know how the sausage is made, and they don't care.
They don't know. They don't care. I want market share. I want profit margin. And I need to deliver fast. I need to keep my customer happy. That's what we typically care about. Tatiana.
Yeah, so I'm going to challenge that because I think that if we become order takers and we just do what's asked, you're never going to be known. But if you become consultants to the business and say, tell me what your outcome is, and I will show you 3 or 4 different paths to get there. And here's the impact, not just because I think we tend to look at just numbers, right? We look at numbers, but so we're actually facing this issue right now at YouTube, where they're looking at chatbots, but I'm also going, okay, so what is the customer satisfaction when we use a chatbot? At what point does that chatbot then have to go to a human? And do we see, do we see impacts to cost? Do we see impacts to CSAT? And that is something that my team is uniquely positioned for. So if I just did what my stakeholders said, and we just, okay, fine, we'll make that happen. But instead, I'm like, I'm going to be a consultant to you. You could do it this way, and if you look at your cost as the most important thing, then this is the most efficient way. If you care about the customer journey, then this is what you do. So that's why I'm saying, if you're invisible, it's because you're being an order taker and not an order maker.
I absolutely love that. And so that's exactly why, if they don't know who you are, it's likely because a couple reasons, right? Because you could not be being an order taker and still not be being known, but it could be just because you simply have yet to tie, okay, this is what I'm doing and this is how it impacts what you actually care about. But that's exactly why, right? Many times it is, hey, you've asked me to give you this, right? You've given me an order. You asked me, hey, how many people I need, and I'm going to launch this new line of business, and when is this? How's this going to impact? Or hey, I want to implement AI. I want to implement these chatbots, and tell me what this is going to be. But you don't know enough of how the sausage is made, right? Like Stephanie said, to be able to understand what the impacts of that is. So like Tatiana said, if you now then come back and say, okay, well, if this is the most important thing to you, then this is the way we would go about getting this done. This is how we need to do this. If this is what's most important to you, then this is how we would go about getting this done. And so moving from that person who's just listening from a surface level to complete the task, right? Versus saying, I need to think like the business owner, but leverage my very unique skills as a WFM professional to say, this is the way that, and give a holistic picture. And this is how you start to shift and move into that strategic advisor type of role and really become an asset to the organization. Like before I make a move, where Juanita at? Before I sign off on this, because I need Tatiana to look over this to make sure I'm thinking about this correctly. Right, because I just have my executive hat on of like, oh yeah, I want to go into Europe and do X, Y, and Z, or oh yeah, I want to implement, I got sold on this chatbot or this AI thing, but what does that mean? Case in point, I was talking to an exec and they were talking about AI and how they were going to be bringing AI into the org and how they got sold on, leveraging AI agents, right, and how it's going to shave off all this handle time. It was another variable that they were talking about, and I said, so. This is a prime example of thinking like a business owner and then leveraging my WFM skills. So I said, when you shave off all of this low-hanging fruit, right? Let's call it 30% of your volume, that the average handle time right now is 3 minutes, right? And so now that leaves the 70%, where that volume, right? Those are the more complex calls that you're saying the agents are going to take. The handle time on those interactions are 20 plus minutes. But your plan, right, I'm just trying to think through it, right? But your plan is to save all this handle time. Your handle time actually increases when you implement AI in the way that you're thinking about implementing it, right? And they're like, but I thought we supposed to be decreasing handle time. It's like you actually eliminate handle time for the 30% because you're leveraging the AI. But now you're left with the 70%. So now I got to think about, okay, now the 70% of the interactions that my agents are going to get, right, are going to be 20 plus minutes. So what does that do from a agent experience perspective? What does that do from a burnout perspective? What does that do from a morale perspective when all your calls now are 20 plus minutes long and you're getting cursed out on all of them because they're the most complex calls? You're no longer getting the easy ones. You're not getting the 3-minute ones where it's like, oh yeah, I was just calling to update my mailing record, right? Because remember, AI is handling that. Now all the calls that your agents are getting are 20 plus minutes. That's what I mean, right? And so when we start to think like a business owner, we're thinking we have a very unique skill set, like I said, as workforce management professionals, to be able to see both sides of the equation. We can say, oh, okay, this is what you're trying to accomplish very strategically. I get it. Right, great, got it. This is my skill set as a WFM leader. If I run this model and say, okay, I'm going to take away that 30%, that's going to leave me with the 70%. This is now what my capacity is for that. This is what this looks like. These are all the different scenarios. What you want to do? Yes. Because it's your company, right? You're the one that's responsible for the thing. That's a different seat to be in. That's a different seat to be in. And so how do we get there? How do we get there? The first is know the fundamentals, okay? So we first got to know the fundamentals and then we go beyond. So when we think about the fundamentals, I like to classify, I call them my core 4, okay? And so the core 4 for us at Solid Rock Consulting is data management, This is critical. I go into organizations and we start to talk about their schedules. We're talking about their pain points of forecasting. We're talking about their pain points of, or their goals and aspirations around automating tasks and all of these different things. And I'm like, okay, so let's talk about where's the data. You got to start with data. Like if you're not starting with data, I don't understand. I don't understand, right? So we have to start with our data, and it's a big, big difference. I want you to repeat this after me, because if you get nothing else from this session, I want you to get this, okay? There is a huge difference between data and data management. In our quest to leverage AI and automate these processes, do forecasting, do all the things that we are doing, we think because we have data, we have a data management process. And that can't be further from the truth. Because I'll come into some of your organizations and I'll ask this question, and I'll get 3 different answers depending on who I'm asking. Like quite literally. That's an example in the book, right? Ask somebody about average handle time, what was average handle time, and got 3 different answers. Not what your definition of what it is. What's the handle time? Oh, it's 3:44. Oh, it's 11:22. It's 6. What? How? Wait a minute. We talk about this cue. But on this scale, what's the handle time? And so many times, because we have disparate tool silos, we have multiple points of truth, we have our workforce tool, we have our ACD, we have different definitions of what handle time may be, right? Then we have all these different answers. And so now, how do I move into forecasting and forecast if I don't have data and a data management process that's the same across these different lines of businesses or queues and different things? Like how do you do that? When we're trying to go into forecasting and we're trying to say, okay, well, this is what my forecast is going to be for this queue or whatever the case may be, and you're off, right? You're trying to figure out, well, why am I off? What's happening? Your data is bad. We have to start with our fundamentals around data, forecasting, scheduling, and intraday. And each of these have subcomponents, right, to them. Right, so when we're thinking about forecasting, we have our capacity planning, our long range, our short range, our intraday. Like we have different forecasts that we're producing for different reasons, right? Scheduling, what are we doing in scheduling? What are we doing in intraday? So these are all critical, right? When we're thinking about the fundamentals of workforce management and the processes that you're going to drive and the outcomes that you're going to drive from the fundamentals of workforce management. But and that's great, right? We got to have it. But how do we go beyond? We have to tie into, I love to call them the ABCs, okay? So that's another thing I want you to get from here, the ABCs, okay? And so the ABCs of going beyond is agent experience, business experience, or business profitability, and the customer experience. How do we leverage our fundamentals, our unique skill set, to tie into agent experience, business profitability, customer experience? These are the ABCs. If you can tie into these things, if you can tie your strategies into these things, then this is where you need to be when we start to think about the future of workforce management. Executives right now are feeling this pressure like never before, okay, to say, hey, I need to gain more market share, right? I need to deliver faster, better, right? And I need to do so profitably, right? Let's not forget the profits, because we ain't in business because we just ain't got nothing to do, right? Right? So let's not forget the profits, right? So executives are feeling that pressure. Your leadership is feeling that pressure. Like, hey, I need to gain more market share. I need to make sure that I'm delivering faster and better. So it's not just about delivering faster, it's about delivering better at the same time, right? And I need to do so sustainably, profitably, okay? So what does this usually mean for the workforce? You can't even have a conversation at work in the first 30 minutes, or you can't even go to a conference without the first 30 minutes, you already know what's about to pop up on the screen. What is it? AI, right? So AI, that conversation is coming up, so it's because that is what that is the era. Every era has its thing, right? You have the .com, but you have the internet, the phase when we enter into internet, right? The industrial revolution, like you have, every era has its thing that kind of governs that era, right? And so we are in a time and space where AI, these digital interactions, these digital experiences. So we've been in this internet phase for the last, I don't know, 50 years, right? 20 years, something when internet hit. But now we've moved from just internet to like this AI phase, right? And so this is the mechanism. If you ever just kind of look at, okay, I'm a history buff. Okay, so I love history. That's a good time for me, is watching the History Channel, Discovery Channel. Like, people might as well be like, you are so not cool. Like, mind your business, okay? Okay, so if you ever kind of look at history and you kind of look at and track these eras, these ages, industrial age and this age and all these different ages, Stone Age, you'll see that there's a certain thing that governs that age. Stone Age, right? This is when metals were brought into, and then this is how the commerce kind of developed, and that's what pushed revenue and all these different things. So what I'm saying about that, right, is being able to kind of look at the era that we are in and be able to understand how it's changing and it's shifting the industry. That's where I'm going with that. I know it took me a little second, right? And so if we look at the era that we're in and we think about AI, okay, we as workforce management professionals have to say, okay, how is AI shifting the workforce, right? Because if we understand how AI is shifting how consumers consume, how businesses deliver and create products, then we understand where our industry is going and how we get ahead, right? So instead of trailing behind and saying, oh, like Tatiana said, being an order taker, we are in front providing solutions. I remember when we first started to see the Ubers and the DoorDashes, these type of business model pop up, and I said, man, gig scheduling people thought I was crazy. I said, gig scheduling is going to be a thing, right? I was like, this is going to, people are like, what? What you mean gig scheduling? I've been talking about this for like maybe, I don't know, at least 10 years now, gig scheduling. And people are like, nobody is ever going to schedule like that one. Nobody's going to schedule in 5, 10, 15 minute intervals. This was 10 years ago, right? And what are we doing now? We're now starting to see organizations schedule in this gig style, in these 30-minute intervals, where this is where, not schedule as far as, okay, let me back up. Not schedule from like, we create schedules in 30-minute increments, but schedule from hey, a person can work 9 to 9:30. And they're done with their shift. They can select very specifically how they want to work to make up their 40 hours for the week. I've been talking about that for 10 years. And to see it now happening, right, is like mind-blowing to me. It's like organizations are starting to do this. But why did that become a thing? Because that's where the industry, this is where organizations started to, or how the consumers are consuming, right? So if consumers are saying, because remember, workforce management is what? Supply and demand. Y'all right? Y'all can talk back to me, right? It's supply and demand. That's what workforce management is. And so if we look at how consumers consume, then that means the demand is going to change. And so now when we have these Ubers and we have these different models of how consumers can consume on demand, right? Then that means the supply is going to shift, right? And so the reason I'm saying that is because if we take that same thought, right? It took some time for organizations, and some organizations still are like, I'm not scheduling like that. My customers, and that's fine for your organization. If your demand isn't on demand, right? Then that's fine. But as we see more of that happen, you'll see more organizations adopt that model. As we see AI push more into the workforce, that means the supply is the nature of the work is going to shift. Where it used to be, oh, this was 100% looks this way, 100% just static work, a human workforce, we're gonna start to see organizations where they have a 70-30 split. 70% human population, 30% AI, robotics, automate, these types of things, right? And so what does that mean for workforce? It means that our workforce is shifting and we have to shift with it. We have to be ahead. So there's an evolution of work that has happened. This has been happening for decades, ages, right? So most people don't realize that the 8-hour workday that we traditionally work right now, this is like almost 100 years old. Henry Ford he is credited with creating this 8-hour workday from industrial manufacturing, so creating these 8-hour workdays. And so we are still today, even in a digital age, leveraging these 8-hour shifts. Even though we have on-demand work, we know we have tools that will tell us, hey, this is when your volume is going to come in, this is how this is going to happen, so forth and so on, and we still are creating just pure 8-hour shifts. In some cases, some organizations have evolved. And they're saying, oh no, I can do stair-step schedules, I can do 30-minute schedules, I can do all these different types of schedules, right? Why am I telling you this? Because it's so important that as we see the world change, see, we're not workforce management people, I'm guilty. We can be here, right? In the weeds of what we're doing. Oh, I create the forecast, I'm doing this. Here's your forecast. Here's your schedule, right? Here's your thing, right? But we have to change our perspective to look up, pivot, look around to say, oh, okay, the workforce has changed. This is how I need to shift to start making these recommendations, again, coming from trailing behind to pivoting and coming around to say, hey, have we considered doing X, Y, and Z? And then selling it, because you're gonna have to sell it. Just like the Wright brothers, right? Like nobody was, what you want me to get up in the air and do what now again? I don't think that's safe. Find something else to do. Right? So you'll have to definitely sell it, and you may be looking crazy until you sell it, but it's always crazy until it's done.
All right, I have a question regarding overtime, and you know, we're about to do overtime, 8-hour workday. And it seems to have become something that, yes, it's been around for 90 to 100 years. I apologize, I'm also a history buff. So, you know, but it seems that it's something that's kind of become codified, you know, in law, more or less. The concept of an 8-hour workday, a 40-hour work week, if you know, some companies that I'm aware of, you know, overtime is anything more than 8 hours in a day, not even 40 hours in a week. It's if you work more than 8 hours in a day, right? And when you think about things like, you know, healthcare, you know, benefits, stuff like that, companies expect, you know, an employee to be between 32 and 40 hours in a week. So my question would be, given the fact that the 8-hour workday, 40-hour work week seems to be, you know, relatively, again, things are codified in the law and in, you know, even though the laws within, you know, companies, corporations, how does WFM work to overcome that kind of pushback?
Yeah, that's an amazing, give me your name, that's an amazing question. Mark Nostrum. That's an amazing question. So you're dealing with a couple different dynamics, right? You're dealing with the confines of your actual scope of influence, which is, okay, I do workforce management and I am forecasting and scheduling and creating schedules to a 40-hour week based on what my environment does and what we've always done. And then you're also dealing with external factors that impact your scope of influence, like the law, right? Like we can't go to jail, right? I don't look good in orange.
Well, I take you in terms of money and penalties.
But not jail kind of orange, right? But you're dealing with a couple different dynamics, right? So you're dealing with what you've always done and that constraint, and then you're dealing with external factors that impact what you're going to be doing. And so I think there are two ways that I would address that, and how I address that when I'm talking to organizations that are like, hey, we need to get more creative with supplying our resources to match our customer demand and aligning those, is one, we still got to follow the law, right? So until external factors shift, we still are going to make sure that, hey, benefits, or we follow break lunch patterns, all those different things that the law says we have to do, because we ain't going to jail, right? But or being fined, right? It's gonna cost us more money. That eats into my profitability, right? But then we also then can think very creatively though as well. So we can still say, hey, there's multiple ways. I was literally just having this conversation the other day. There's multiple ways to get to 40 other than 8-hour days, right? Just like if we're thinking about, someone asked me the other day about, hey, 2 + 2 is, as most people say, 4. But I'm like, yeah, so is 0.5. +1 plus 0.5, right? That's 2 + 2, right? That's 4 as well. So there are multiple ways to get to the 40 hours. There are multiple ways to still figure out, okay, what company policies need to shift in order to still grant benefits, right? And this is why I say you have to sell it, right? You have to sell it because then you have to understand what's important to, like Tatiana said, what is important to executive leadership? What is on our strategic goals? I go into organizations and a lot of times I'm talking to leaders and I'm saying, hey, what's on the strategic roadmap for the year? Like, what's your 5-year, 10-year plan? What's your vision? What are you trying to accomplish? And then I'm tying, you'll see me talk about this a little bit later, but I'm tying into that. I'm never trying to get buy-in. I want you to scratch that from your vocabulary. I'm never trying to get buy-in. I'm trying to tie into what matters to you. Because if I can tie into what matters to you, I don't need to get buy-in. You're already bought in because it's your initiative, right? It's what's gonna get you promoted. That's literally how I got the nickname Contact Center Whisperer, right? Is because I was like, what's important to you? How do you meet your goal? How do you get promoted? How do you, I don't need to be the in front of the scenes person. I just need to help you get to where if you help, I think this was, I love this guy. I cannot, and his name just escaped my brain. When I say it, you're gonna probably know if you, Zig Ziglar, right? If you help enough people get what they want, as a byproduct, you'll get what you want. And I'm paraphrasing, okay? So I believe that when we think about, so long answer to your question, right, is what is the organization trying to do? How do I stay compliant, legal, all those different things? But then what are the creative ways I can go about still accomplishing this goal, right? Tatiana, you're gonna say something.
I would say one thing too is like, I'll hear sometimes, like, oh, we tried that before and it didn't work. But I think the reality is like business priorities change.
Yep.
You know, and so recognizing that. So yeah, you know, maybe you tried that 3 years ago, 4 years ago, but that wasn't the focus. So, you know, understand like, okay, you know, maybe, you know, in COVID, the focus was very different. And so the problems we were trying to solve is very different. And now it's like, oh, markets are down. So now it's like, oh, we have to pivot. So efficiency becomes really, really critical. And it'll go back and it's like, oh, okay, no, customer experience. So understand that the answers will change depending on what the business priorities. So don't just say, oh, we tried that, it didn't work. Like, maybe that wasn't the focus then. So that doesn't mean it can't work or you shouldn't present it today.
Yeah, delay is not denial, right? Delay, just because it's not a focus right now, does not mean that tomorrow it won't be a focus, because it's something about when we ain't meeting budget, all of a sudden what I said 3 months ago or 3 years ago, now all of a sudden, oh, that's a good idea.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, no, now you want to, yes, whatever you want, you know? So customer, I'm gonna kind of go through the rest of it again, like you have this inside of the app, but I wanna make sure I get you out of here on time, and I leave time for you to ask any additional questions that you may have. As long as customers plus resources equals business success, as long as this equation remains the same, the future will be workforce management, right? So what do I want you to walk away with from a strategy perspective? And when you're thinking about your role and securing your role, but then also making deep impacts. I want you to be thinking about agent experience, which is the resource, right? When I'm saying agent experience, I'm not just talking about human, right? I did a podcast maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and we're talking about the future of the agent role, how does that role change inside of organizations? And I said, I believe that the future of the agent means that this role so dynamically changes that we're not just talking about humans, we're talking about any resource that we employ on behalf of the business, to conduct business on behalf of the business. That's an agent, okay? If we have a resource that's doing business on behalf of the business, we are employing them as agents. They're a resource. And so I want us to begin to start to think about what is the agent experience. So if we have these agents handling interactions, who's monitoring the agents that's handling the interactions, these AI agents? Like, who's doing quality on the AI? Who's checking that the AI actually gave the right answer? If we do this for humans, why don't we think we need to do this for AI? Like, if we write job recs for humans, why are we not writing job recs for AI? Like, we just all out here willy-nilly, like, oh, you get AI, you get AI. Oh yeah, AI, what? What the AI supposed to do? Who wrote the job rec for the AI? Like, I need the AI to do this particular thing. This is how AI will be managed and monitored and trained, right? This is how we're gonna onboard the AI. And this is why AI gets this bad rap, is because we are selling AI without saying, okay, this is the job rec. This is how I'm gonna onboard AI. This is how I'm gonna performance manage AI. Right? And so when we think about agent experience, yes, I'm talking about humans, but I'm talking about any resource that we employ on behalf of the business. I want you to start thinking about that now in your role. I want you to also begin to start thinking about the business experience, profitability. Do I even understand how we make money in our organization? You'd be so surprised how many people don't understand how their organization actually makes money. And they be like, that's not my job. My job is to forecast. Maybe your job is to make sure that this company make money so that you can get a check, right? On Friday. right? Like, so understand, like, we need to be thinking like that, thinking like a business owner and leveraging our very unique skills as a workforce management professional, okay? Customer experience. We also need to make sure that we understand how the business gets customers and what that experience looks like. When we think about agent experience, some of the old ways, some of the new ways, right? When we think about business experience, these are some of the old ways of thinking about workforce management and our workforce. These are some of the more new ways, right? So you see Tatiana right here, right? Strategic enabler, advisor, you're thinking about outcomes-based staffing, CX, EX, ROI, collaborative across various departments like finance. Listen, when I was in workforce management inside of organizations, because I still consider myself in workforce management, because y'all ain't getting rid of me, okay? When I was in everybody's business, I was in IT business, I was in finance, I was in HR business. It was like, Juanita, don't you work in workforce? Why are you all over here in IT? Huh? I'll never forget Brian at United Healthcare. He worked in IT. In my office, I would have like these Fridays. This is when people came in the office, and I would have like these huddle sessions where I would bring in donuts and fruit and all these different things, because this is where I was getting the intel on HR, on IT, on finance. Everybody was invited, right? They all came to my office. And that's how I got everything I wanted, right? But I was in everybody's business. So you have to work collaboratively across the different departments if you want to get the things that you need to get done. So that not just because I want to get it done, because for me, but because I want to make impact in the organization. And the workforce where we don't necessarily, some of our, we're not in the office, you still have to think, okay, like how can I still work collaboratively across various departments? Other departments should know you exist. They should know what your impact is, and you should know where you impact their work, okay? Customer experience, right? We need to be thinking about old ways and new ways, right? So old ways, we're thinking about fast answers, we're thinking about single channels, these different ways of how customers may reach out to us, versus now we're thinking about personalized, proactive support. Because why? Why are we thinking about these things? Because we understand the customer's journey. And if I understand the customer journey, I can figure out ways that I can automate parts of that customer journey, how I can create more profitability, which helps you to sell your points, right? But if you don't know the journey that the customer takes, how are you going to effectively line up resources? You see what I'm saying? You see how this moves from being a very, I'm doing the fundamentals of workforce management, of forecasting, scheduling, and all those different things, to start to say, okay, what journey does the customer take? What touch points do they have? I can automate that, which means I can save this from being an interaction in the first place, which means I can save, right? But sometimes we're not thinking like that. We're just thinking, let me do my job and let me go home. So we want to think about how we actually understand that customer experience, okay? And drive meaningful impact. So here's some strategies. When we think about agent experience, these are some ones that are very tangible that I want you to take home with you. I want you to think about, when was the last time you did a Q analysis? To actually look at, okay, how does my volume come in? And how do I map those skills? Like, how do I do skill group profiles to make sure that I am aligning the right cues with each other, so that how I train and onboard resources, they're the most effective. So Q analysis, skill group profiles, and then training and onboarding plans. Like, those are all things that kind of go in that same category, and that all impact your agent experience, and as well as profitability. An example of that, because I see your eyes glossing over. So what that looks like, okay, is pulling your ACD data and saying, I get 100,000 calls, right? And these are where my calls come in. 10% come in on the sales queue. 15% come on this queue. 45%, oh my gosh, come in on this queue. Never really realized that much. So I'm never meeting service level on this queue and on this queue. Maybe if I group these together, right, and train this like this, then I will be able to, one, consolidate this, leverage multi-skilling, right, and get a better efficiency and meet my service level. You're looking at Q analysis, skill group profiles, and a training onboarding plan. And sometimes we're not doing that. We're just saying, I'm going to be skilling people, I'm moving people around day of, and your introvert people are going crazy because you're just moving people day of, every day, mass skill changes just to respond or react to what's happening in the moment, and not thinking more strategically of like, how do I group these, how do I pair work together in the most natural way possible. We the ones, we usually do that for operations to do, but we're the ones who actually have the data insights to say, hey, this actually pairs together better. not only from a data standpoint, but also from a like just workflow standpoint. So why don't we train this like this and make that recommendations to HR or the training coordinator, so forth and so on. Right? So this is a real thing, and one of the things that we are always looking at when we go in organizations that are making service level on certain cues and not making service level on other cues. AI to assist, alleviate, and automate. When I'm thinking about AI, I'm bucketing it into 3 categories. We are either leveraging AI to assist the agent, right? AI to alleviate call volume, or AI to automate the process. And it could be multiple of these things. And so when we're thinking about how we introduce AI into our workforce, we need to be thinking about, okay, that job description again, what is AI gonna do? Are we trying to alleviate volume interactions? Is this AI going to be assisting the agent so that we shave off and we help them do their job better? Or are we automating some kind of workflow and process? Like, what's the job description? And it's not as duties assigned, right? Right? So we need to be thinking about that. Why? Because we want to think more market share, better margins, and faster delivery. Okay? The rest of these are all inside of your deck, all right? But what I want to really leave you with, okay, is I want you to start to assess your WFM Fundamentals maturity. So you can understand, okay, am I on the fundamental side and I need to shore that up? Or am I ready for the go beyond side and I need to start thinking through the ABCs, agent, business, customer, and identify what are those high impact opportunities on an agent, business, and customer side that allow you to go beyond and align your current workforce strategies with the executive goals of market share, profitability, right, and delivering faster and better, okay? Thank you guys so much. I know I'm over time, but I would love to connect with you.